When the US jets totally destroyed the two Japanese cities, more than 500,000 lives were perished. The smoke was everywhere, eyes were sunken, death was inevitable. But there was one guy who truly survived both of these horrific attacks. And how he survived while hundreds of people were dusted, his story is one of the most unforgettable. So, this man's name is Sato. He's 29, he lives in Japan, he works as a naval engineer designing oil tanker ships, and he's a really smart guy. Sato has been working out of town for nearly 3 months since he is designing this new oil tanker, and this is his last day working away from home, and he is eager to leave that city. All he wants to do is get home and be with his wife and son. He heard a rumble in the air as he was walking back to his house. Yamaguchi saw an American bombers, and that is when things go wild. A little device was thrown out of the jets, and it looked scary as hell. He had just enough time to get into a ditch close by before a loud boom shook the ground and everything went dark. He was suddenly surrounded by a bright, magnesium-like white light that made the universe explode. He had lived through the blast. Yamaguchi woke up in the morning to find that the sky was still cloudy and that the explosion's dust and debris had almost completely blocked out the sun. He also had burns on his face and arms and ruptured eardrums. He was still alive, which is hard to believe, even though he was less than 2 miles from the center of the disaster. Others weren't so lucky. The explosion killed about 30% of the people in the city, and tens of thousands more died in the months that followed. He talked about how he felt after the bombings in an interview in the UK many years later. He said, "I saw a giant mushroom-shaped pillar of flames rising as far as the sky could go. It was like a tornado, but it didn't move. Instead, it rose to the top and spread out horizontally. It was a prismatic light that changed in a complicated way, like the patterns in a kaleidoscope. The first thing I did was make sure I still had my legs and that I could move them. I thought to myself, if I stay here, I'll die." 2 hours later, Yamaguchi, who was confused by what was going on, set out for the shipyard where he had worked before it was destroyed. While he was there, he found out that 2 of his co-workers, Akira Iwanaga and Kuniyoshi Sato, had lived through it. Because they couldn't do much, the 3 people had to stay in an air raid bunker for the rest of the day and night. After that, they went to a nearby train station that was still open. And the intensity of this blast is so strong that it lifts him off the ground and flips him into the air, spinning him like a tornado before slamming him to the ground and knocking him out. And as he regains consciousness, everything is dark. His ears are ringing, and he realizes, oh shh, I'm dead. And it takes him a while to realize he's not dead, he's alive and lying in a potato patch. And he rises up, hardly able to see through the dense falling ash around him. But off in the distance, he notices a massive mushroom cloud of fire rising into the sky because Sato was in Hiroshima at the time of the world's first atomic bomb attack. And so he looks at himself, and his face and arms are severely burned, his eardrums are ruptured, and everything hurts. So he stumbles through the falling ash with minimal vision, making his way to what remains of the shipyard where he works. And there he finds 2 of his co-workers, both covered in ash and severely burned. So the 3 of them look at each other and say, "What should we do now?" Now here's the thing. Japan is currently in the middle of World War II, and local governments and individuals have been constructing air raid shelters all throughout the country to protect people in the event that bombs are dropped, so the entire country is preparing for war. So the 3 men look around and find one of these air raid shelters, and they go inside, and they're all huddled up with some other survivors, and it's there that they hear their first bit of encouraging news. One of the local train stations is still operational, and the trains are still running. So the 3 guys spend the night in that shelter, and the next morning, Sato says, "Hey, I need to get home to my wife and kid." Unfortunately, his wife and child are currently in another city, many hours away via train. So Sato and his co-workers, all 3, set out on foot, determined to reach this train station, and they walk all the way across the city, or what remains of it, which is an apocalyptic hellscape. Everything is either covered in ash or on fire, and the most of the buildings have been completely destroyed. But the worst aspect is that the streets are littered with charred and melted bodies. And since this is an overnight trip, the train arrives at his station the next morning, and Sato gets off and goes immediately to the hospital, where the charcoal burns on his face and hands are so terrible that his doctor does not recognize him. But he gets treatment, they wrap him up, and he returns home to see his wife and son. And when he returns home, he is burned and bandaged, and his family does not recognize him. Regardless, he is with his family, alive and safe. Until the next morning, Sato wakes up, and he's a man who is committed to his career, since despite being brutally injured and mentally scarred, He gets ready and heads off to work at the home office in his city. And when he arrives to work and his supervisor sees him all wrapped up, he asks, "What the hell happened to you?" I mean, the boss had heard there was an attack on Hiroshima, but he doubts Sato would have survived. So the boss pulls him aside into a conference room, and he says, "Okay, buddy, tell me what the hell happened." Sato begins relaying the narrative, saying, "Yeah, they dropped a bomb on me back in Hiroshima. It was crazy." And of course, the boss is like, "What? One bomb can't destroy an entire city." And famous last words, because at that very moment, pow, a crazy bright flash fills the sky, the exact same flash Sato saw before, and it blinds him for a moment, but he's been through this before, and he knows what's coming this time, and he immediately dives directly to the floor, and then a massive kaboom, and all the windows in the office shatter, and there's debris and glass everywhere, and everything in the office is destroyed and blown over. When Sato awakens, all of his bandages have been blown off, and everything around him is in complete disarray. A second atomic bomb had just been detonated, and people were panicked and shouting, and the entire city had been destroyed, including the building he was in. Sato checks himself and finds no additional injuries. He is relieved as he had survived 2 atomic bomb bombings, one in Hiroshima and another 3 days later in Nagasaki. What are the odds? But then, he remembers his wife and son back home, and he wonders if the bomb killed them or if they were injured. So Sato rushes out of the building, or what remains of it, and runs as fast as he can through the falling ash, dodging fires left and right, attempting to reach home. And soon enough, he arrives at his house, but it is no longer home because the entire structure has been reduced to a pile of rubble, and he is crushed. How could this be? What happened to his wife and child? Okay, so this is what occurred. Shortly before the bomb goes off, the wife thinks, Sato is really burned up. I'm going to the store and get some ointment for when he gets home from work. So mother brings the son to the store, and that's when the bomb goes off. Fortunately, the store was much further away from the bomb than the house, so the wife and son suffered only minor injuries. In 2006, he landed in New York and talked to the UN about the dangers of nuclear weapons. The documentary, which stars Yamaguchi, was released the same year. Tsutomu Yamaguchi's case was really heart-melting. Akira Avanga and Kiyoshi Sato, the engineer's colleagues with whom he departed Hiroshima, also survived the 2 bombs. Sengoshi Morimoto, a local kite manufacturer who was half a mile away from the crash site, also survived. But regardless, Sato suffered radiation, and that caused poisoning, and he died at 93. On December 2010, the BBC made Yamaguchi the main character of their comedic show, QI. QI host Stephen Fry entertained the audience with questions such as whether the bomb fell on Yamaguchi or bounced off of him. This infuriated Japanese diplomats, so the program was discontinued. Toshiko Yamasaki, the engineer's daughter, expressed surprise that a nuclear-armed United Kingdom would make such jokes. When we think about survival, fate, and destiny, they are all fascinating because these ideas have shaped society as long as there has been a recorded history. We can look at the ancient Greeks, whose ideologies were mostly about the gods on Mount Olympus playing the dice and choosing the fortunes of the common people below. We may look to Hinduism, where the concept of karma is frequently associated with a model of fate. And I believe it makes reasonable, considering how people who survive tragedies of all kinds should have died. It's truly a wonder to see them walk out of these situations.